Hello, welcome back. It is week 117 on Out on That Line, the go-to podcast for Kesha fans worldwide. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
I am over here licking my wounds because you talk about that Kesha episode. Woo! Did we step in it with that one? Holy shit. I can't believe we always joked about like pissing off Swifties, pissing off the Beehive, neither of which ever happened. I think we're so low in the pecking order, it would never even occur to people to come engage with us. But apparently the little monsters or the animals or whatever they call her fans, they have the time on their hands to seek us out and like be really personally aggressive, like trying to say things that like destroy your spirit and make you question who you are and why you're here.
Yeah, they stopped just shy of like telling us to unalive ourselves, so I really, I guess good on Kesha for having such dedicated fans. That's always a task to achieve. I will stand by the fact that it just wasn't a great album. I mean, I don't care if we like missed certain things about it. I don't think knowing those things about it made it any better for me. So I don't think any of it in the end mattered whatsoever.
No, none of it matters whatsoever, but it's just very funny to me that their whole thing is like, how dare you not build up Kesha, and then they proceed to break you down. Like, you should really, one guy was so dramatic. He was like, you should sit and think about your life and really consider how serious you're going to take this thing. Because if you want this podcast to be, he like gave us an aggressive, like Herb Brooks pep talk, while also like the undercurrent was unalive yourselves. Like, I want to hurt
Yes.
you bad enough that you consider that an option. And I just think that's the funniest shit ever. So for that reason, I don't know. The Kesha album might be my favorite thing that came out this year because it gave us that. And I don't think we've seen the end of the animals.
I like that angle that you're looking at it from there, and I tend to agree. I think overall, it was a very positive experience for everyone involved.
I couldn't be happier with the way things went.
But what do you say we get right into this album? This Jason Isbell and the 400 unit and the new album Weathervanes, which was, I will start right off the bat. I always do this now as I look at how long the album's going to be, just so I kind of know I can kind of plan my time out. And this one comes in at a flat hour. So in my opinion, I think it's worth spending that hour, but just know that you're going to have from start to finish. It's a bit longer than a lot of the albums we've been doing recently, and I think that does kind of matter, and I'll get into why as we get deeper into the album. But I don't know how much Jason Isbell you'd listen to in the past. It's not. I don't know if I'd really listen to like mountains of it or anything like that. There's a couple albums that I'd listen through, and then songs that'd be on playlists and things like that. So I had pretty like okay knowledge of Jason Isbell, and certainly follow him on Twitter and kind of just have a sense about who he is. But this was the first time I really just like sat down and was like, I'm going to consume a Jason Isbell album in a manner of like, I'm really going to just dive in and pick it apart and just see what, really how good it is. And right off the bat, I mean, I really overall was very impressed with this album.
Yeah, I mean, not to bury the lead, but I loved it. And again, I think I'm probably on a similar level with Jason Isbell, where Nashville sound is really the one I'm most familiar with. But I wouldn't say that I'm like a giant. Again, this is one of those moments where we admit our lack of expertise, but we can say we have some sense of familiarity. So obviously, when it was coming out, I was like, well, it's probably going to be great. And lo and behold, it like completely blew my expectations away. And the weird thing is, when the like first like minute of the album started and we got kind of like caught into this, like for a minute I was like, whoa, the mix sounds off. His voice is like really prominent in the mix, and I was like really weirdly fixated on like this doesn't like sound right. What's going on? And then you realize you're an idiot and it's intentional, and it just like builds and builds and builds. And that's the story of this album, is it will like sneak things in at you and then just blow them up without you even like realizing it's happening until it's too late, which is an ominous way to say it's an endlessly technically excellent and clever album with a ton for us to get into.
Yes, and this for me, and I knew Jason Isbell was like a really, really good songwriter. I knew that that was a real strength of his and kind of always has been. That's why he's in the position he's in. I didn't realize like how good of a singer he is, like how technically good of a singer he is, and like how good his voice fits in this style of music. It's just like very vital in kind of how it feels and how it sounds throughout the whole album. I also think his like just wordplay and songwriting itself, just right off the bat, is really good, really strong start with Death Wish, but it just gets better and better and better as the album goes on. And musically, things change and move in and out. And there's always, like you said, there's surprises all over the place, things that you didn't know he was capable of that he just like throws in there, and everything fits so seamlessly. Like at no point in this album did I feel like there was stuff that was disjointed or didn't belong where it was. I felt like it was all sequenced very well. I mean, it just top to bottom, I think was just extremely strong. And I think of what I know about his his past work and everything, I think this is the best I've ever heard out of him.
And even the stuff that I think was not necessarily the strongest material on the album, like Middle of the Morning to me, I did something I haven't done in a long time. And I took notes. I took 3 pages of notes
Mhm.
while I was listening to this through, and then like going back through it. And I have lyrics from almost every song. So like Middle of the Morning is one of those where I just have like one line and it's nothing. But a lot of these, it's like you listen to them and you read the lyrics and you're like, fuck, this is an insanely political album, but it's not preachy. It's universal, but it's like super personal to him. Like he's not telling anybody what to do. He's presenting these stories. He works out a lot of his like future anxiety through his songs, all these like what if scenarios. What if I was this person or I made this choice? What if this happens down the road? He's exploring all that stuff, talking about a ton of topics, which we'll get into, and doing it just like perfectly. Cause again, it's not done in a way where any, you know, goon could jump in there and be like, "Oh, I don't like that he's condescending to me. Why is there an agenda in his music?" It's like he's telling stories about very real, very terrifying things and his take on them, and it's not shoving it down anyone's throat. It's like high wire balancing act that he pulls off flawlessly.
Yeah, and I was kind of going through and reading some of the lyrics in some of these songs. Um and just really just taking in how good it is. Like there's a lot of kind of like entendres and things that mean two things at once and that kind of stuff in there, but there's also just a lot of straight out like linear kind of storytelling as well, and he does both so well. A lot of times you
Mm.
get an artist that's good at kind of one or the other. Like I think Gordon Lightfoot type of songwriters like kind of linear storylines, like point A to point B. There's some deeper thought and meaning behind that stuff, but it's all based around kind of a beginning, middle, and an end. And I think Jason Isbell like straddles the line between like very existential type of lyrics, like things that are take some unpacking and take some real like kind of introspection to figure, because you have to figure out how it relates to you to understand what he's saying. And I think that's a really kind of rare skill, I guess. I don't know. Well, maybe not rare. I guess everybody connects to things in different ways, but he's one of the rare artists. I guess I'll put it that way. He's one of the rare artists that I think is able to create that connection with me. And I think the way he writes lyrics, it allows me to think deep enough about them that I get interested, but it's also easy enough to understand that you don't have to work that hard at it, but a little bit of hard work is very rewarding with his music.
Yeah, because they're not, you're right. The lyrics are not like super esoteric read between the lines. They're definitely more storytelling and they're very existential. And you can't like if that's what you're doing is telling an existential story, you can't fuck around. You have to be kind of clear about it. But what you do is be interesting and poetical about how you're going about it. And so like we should I guess just get into it.
Sure.
My runaway favorite on this album, King of Oklahoma,
Oh, yeah, buddy.
incredible
Dude,
hook,
that song is so good.
incredible hook. She used to wake me up. It
Mhm.
was incredible. And then, like, you have wordplay, which is, like, darkly funny because when you look at it in isolation, you're like, "That's very funny." And then you look at it in the context of the song, you're like, "That's very dark." Um, so it's the story of opioid like, a guy who descends into opioid abuse
Mhm,
and loses everything, and it's, like, the story so there's this segment where it's like, "What happened to get him there?" "I was emptying my bladder on a 20-foot ladder. I should have climbed down and found myself some shade." So he fell off a ladder and fucked up his back while he was taking a piss.
mhm,
So, like, ah ha ha, in like a Chris Farley movie, you'd laugh your ass off. In this case, it leads to him becoming hopelessly addicted to
yeah,
opioids. And it's just like lines like that that paint such a vivid picture and like talk about stealing copper and being like really fucking dark and frank about it. But it's also like really beautiful that chorus about like she used to make me feel like the king of Oklahoma. Like
mhm,
you're riding so high on that feeling, and then you're realizing that he just doesn't have that anymore, and it's brutal. And the songs, he does a great job in these songs of like humanizing these things, these characters, and kind of flipping between like, well, okay, here are their flaws, and here's what's
mhm.
their hopes and dreams. It's just really great storytelling.
And you know what I sort of got the sense here. So one of Sturgill Simpson, The Ballad of Dude and Juanita, in the way that album's kind of structured and the way those stories get told, and there's different characters that you learn about, and it seems like kind of vignettes rather than like one big kind of concept over the whole album. Also, Fountains of Wayne, Welcome Interstate Messengers,
Mhm. Managers.
so that sort of kind of structure of that album as well. I feel like I kind of got some similarities between that and this Jason Isbell album, in that it's a kind of a compilation of stories that kind of tell that contribute to one bigger message, I guess.
Mhm.
And it to me, King of Oklahoma is fantastic. If You Insist is fantastic. As you move towards the end, Miles is like 7 minutes long, and the entirety of it is fantastic. I mean, it's just
Mm.
everything works. Like there's a purpose to everything. So when I was, when you talk about an hour long album, like that's a chunk. Like that's a chunk of time compared to, a 38-minute album, a 40-minute album. You're talking about 4 or 5 extra songs at least when you go to an hour versus something that's like 38 or 40 minutes. So it's a substantial difference. And a lot of times what can happen is you have some filler songs, because it's hard to write 18 songs and have them all be good. It's a lot easier to write 10 or 11. So that's why a lot of bands do it that way. And that way they're not kind of firing all their guns at once. They can save some of those songs for another album, another time, whatever it might be. To do an hour long album and have, the longest song on there is 7 minutes. Everything else comes in at like between 3 and 5 minutes. That's
Mhm.
a lot of songs on that album. And to have them all contribute something equally, and I guess there are a couple songs on there that are a lot better than most other people are going to write, just doesn't hold up quite to the level as the other songs on this album. So like relatively, I guess, aren't as good. But I'm not really trying to bash them that much because there wasn't a lot on this album I didn't like. It's
Yeah.
just to be able to do that over a full hour, is that takes some talent, and it's not just songwriting talent. It's also, you have to be charismatic, because you have to like make me want to spend that much time with some art that you put out, and I think that's part of his deal, is that word we always talk about is authenticity. Like none of this seems like a lie. Nothing he ever says, like on Twitter or in interviews, ever seems like a lie. Everything, whether if the truth is going to hurt his stock, he's going to say it anyway, and I think that is to be appreciated, not only in his songwriting, but just in general as a person, and I think that's what makes it so satisfying to have an album like this, because it's an hour. It's a long album, but every bit of it was good because one, I like him, and it was really good music.
And even the stuff that I wasn't crazy about, like, Middle of the Morning, like I said, and then
Mhm,
Vestavia Hills, it's stuff like that where I'm like,
mhm,
it doesn't rise to the level of the best, like the top tier stuff on this album. But at the same time, it's like, what are you going to pick on about it other than
mhm.
it was outclassed by, I think, songs that had more thematic depth to them.
Yeah.
So just stuff like White Beret, like the topics that are discussed on this fucking album I'll just rattle them off for the people
Hmm.
in order. We have Death Wish, which is about loving a suicidal woman, an unalive woman. I don't know what I'm saying. Um, King of Oklahoma, opioid addiction. Strawberry Woman, losing your old ways as you grow together out of codependency and into full functioning relationship. So not super extreme.
Hmm.
Save the World, Uvalde. It's a song about, and again, it's an inherently political song, but it's a super personal song because he's
Hmm.
thinking about it from like the perspective of a parent. He's on record as being like a horribly anxious person. So like add to that, like it's the image, like what's the line in it? A balloon popping at a grocery store. My heart jumped out of my chest. I looked around to find the exit door. Which way out of here is the best? And it's like this like private and public moment in the bridge where he's like, can we keep our daughter? Can we homeschool her? Can we never let her get out there in harm's way? So it's like specifically from the point of view of a terrified parent. It's not
Hmm.
like thrusting anything on anyone that they can't understand. So again, it's like very political, but it's very personal. And that's what made this like such an interesting album to me because it's all these different perspectives and he seems to be like so deeply embedded in all of them. It's
Hmm.
he's great at creating these characters that are part him again because he's working out his feelings about these things. It fucking rocks. It made an hour feel like simultaneously a lifetime in a second.
Yes, and I mean, that honestly, that's what great albums do. And this one to me is a great album. And I think I heard an interview that he was doing when I was over in California over the weekend, and when I was driving around, I was just like going through radio stations and landed on NPR, and it was an interview he was doing about this album, and they were asking specifically about that song called "Save the World," and they were asking him just about kind of where it came from and all that, and he said he had kind of the hardest time writing that song because obviously subject matter, and he was like, how do I guess he was just concerned about like how he could say what he needed to say in the way that he wanted to say it. And I think that was his big issue, and probably, I mean, probably same issue a lot of songwriters run into on a lot of different songs. But I think because of this topic and how sensitive it is, that's something he obviously that plays into it. He's not an ignore the rest of the world, I'm just going to say whatever I want to say kind of person. He is somebody that I think does like considers what his place in the world means and what his position means in relation to other people, and how to make sure that he's kind of, taking care of himself while also not hurting anybody else. And I think that when he takes that approach to his songwriting, you can get a song that could like Save the World could have gone a bad way. It could have been like where were you when they built the ladder to heaven? It could have very easily gone like that kind of way with that. Something very cheesy and like a we are the world kind of BS. But it didn't. It said exactly, I think, what those songs were trying to say about their particular topics, but it said it in a way that it's personalized it so much. Like I think that's his main talent, is making you feel and look at things from the angle that he is. I think when you can tell stories so in such detail and kind of flesh out characters in a 4-minute song as well as he can, it makes it so easy to buy into that stuff. And if you're talking about like a songwriter in their prime, I don't know if anybody's in their prime harder than Jason Isbell is right now.
He's so intentional and methodical with you can see it in the lyrics like it's like you said the way he wants to say what he wants to say, he thinks about it. And the point is he has something to say. It's not just like, well, this is a hot topic, I should write a song about this. This is like, this is eating me up inside and I need to find the proper way to express this so that I can deal with it and nobody can mistake how I feel and where I stand on this thing. And the only other person who I think is doing something similar is our guy Tyler Childers. Like
Hmm.
at the risk of becoming
Yeah.
too self-referential to our own lore on the show, it's true. They both like hot on the heels of Can I Take My Ounce to Heaven comes, which was like very personal in a different way. It was very spiritual. It was trying a lot of different stuff on.
Hmm.
the fact that it was like 3 different versions of it, like that was Tyler Childers doing something audacious. This is Jason Isbell making a straight up album and just letting his inner artist all hang out. All 10.5 inches of it just hanging out all over this album. And it's just it's one of those albums you love to run across because some things get you more on like the style or the way that the music sounds or the playfulness of the lyrics. But this is so rich in everything: theme, lyric, music, execution, his voice. He's like great at characterizing it in different ways to play different characters without it being goofy. It's just it fit. It's no wonder he's going to be in the next Scorsese movie because he seems like he's got like a really decent sense of drama without being cheesy, and it helps him say these things and pull these things off, and you believe it, you buy into it, and it's a hell of a ride. And I think, not to spoil anything or jump ahead, but for me, it's an obvious buy it.
Oh, 100%. I'm gonna buy the CD. I'm gonna buy the vinyl. Like whatever version of this album I come across, it's going into the collection because it's. And I think when you come across, because this is the same kind of music we've done a million reviews on. Like this is not. He's very inventive within this genre. As far as like kind of the instrumentation he might use and the structures of the songs here and there. But it's like country music. It's like that country. I don't know if they want to be called Americana, but it's like that skewed on that side of the music. It's like a cross between the Gaslight Anthem and Tyler Childers. I think Jason Isbell kind of falls like kind of right there in the middle. And to me, it's like it's just sometimes an album gives you a feeling. Like the Sturgill Simpson album, The Ballad of Dude and Juanita, just like it was such an off the wall kind of album, but it just gives you that feeling that this is a quality piece of work, and you can at least appreciate that. For me, since Sturgill's one of my favorite artists, and Jason Isbell is, I mean, clearly kind of on his way if he keeps putting albums out like this. It's like I'm going to be more biased towards that music anyway, but when it's this good, I think anybody could get into this, and I don't know if it's like if there's a certain person that's like this genre is just not for them, but I think this genre is like pretty easy to listen to. Like that's very inoffensive as far as the instrumentation and the song structures and things like that. It's pop music and structures. And if you can't get into this album, you're probably not going to be into any type of this music at all, because this is as good as it gets.
Yeah, if you don't like this, you're a cold fish.
Yeah.
Um, maybe the Kesha people would like to listen to this and chill the fuck out.
They should. If anybody that needs to listen to this album, it's everybody that commented on that video of ours.
You should all be ashamed of yourselves.
Yeah. But we did have some on, I think on one of those, I don't know if it was the Kesh album or somebody else that commented something that they didn't like about our video. I guess that's the like drawback of finally getting a decent amount of followers, is that you're going to get more and more people that maybe aren't going to like what you have to say. But we've got people that jump into the comments and defend us. So that's pretty neat. I think that's where the spotlight needs to go here.
Yeah, it's pretty nice. It's nice to have people who will fight your battles for you, I've always said. And it's nice to see that dream becoming a reality for me. But that is legitimately cool that the channel has kind of taken on. You start to see kind of some of the usual suspects, mostly with the Australians.
Yes.
But yeah, it's a pretty wild thing to see. And the funny thing is, you can see it at youtube.com/C/out on that line. If you want to witness what's going down in the comments, who's at war with who, faction warfare. We've got Swifties fighting the Beehive, fighting the animals, fighting the monsters, because I think those are Lady Gaga's people. It's just dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. It's all over the comments on the Out on That Line YouTube channel, which can be found at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Singles videos, reactions, podcasts, anything we feel like doing. We have stuff we haven't even unleashed on you yet, because if there's one thing we love, it's making a threat and not following through. And you can come and see how much we mean that shit at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
Yeah, everything he just said. Go to the site, go to the channel, subscribe down below. Let us know what you want to hear. Until next time.